Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The asphalt of the DMV parking lot baked under the scorching midday sun, a shimmering mirage floating above its surface. A pair of long, slender legs, encased in sheer silk, emerged from the darkly tinted window of a sleek, custom-built sports car that glided into an empty spot. It was like watching a butterfly gracefully unspool from a cocoon as a body enveloped in swaths of vibrant fabric stepped out into the light. Each step of those stiletto-clad feet was steady and purposeful, as if the owner were marching to a drum only they could hear. Makeup highlighted the sharp angles and soft curves of an imposing face, framed exquisitely by waves of hair. The figure breathed deeply, filling their lungs with hot, dry air, not a hint of hesitation or doubt in their manner. This day had been meticulously planned down to the smallest detail. Inside, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the crowded room. Conversations hushed as heads turned to observe the newcomer. Jackson lifted his chin and walked confidently to the check-in kiosk, ignoring the whispers and stares. His manicured fingers, sporting a tasteful nude polish, tapped the touchscreen as he entered his information. "Number 42, please proceed to counter 3. A monotone voice called out over the intercom. With a deep breath, Jackson made his way to the designated counter. The employee behind it, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and thick-rimmed glasses, looked up from her computer screen. Her eyes widened slightly, but to her credit, her professional demeanor remained intact. "Good morning," Jackson said, his voice soft but steady. "I'm here to renew my driver's license." The woman nodded, her fingers poised over the keyboard. "Certainly, sir. May I see your current license and proof of address, please?" Jackson flinched internally at the "sir," but maintained his composure. He reached into his purse, a sleek black number that complemented his outfit perfectly, and produced the required documents. As the employee processed his information, Jackson's mind wandered to the events that had led him to this moment. For years, he'd suppressed his desire to express his feminine side, fearing judgment and rejection. But the weight of living a lie had become unbearable. It started with small, secret indulgences, painting his toenails, wearing silky underwear beneath his suits. Gradually, the need to fully embrace this part of himself grew stronger. "Mr. Thompson." The employee's voice snapped him back to reality. "I noticed that your appearance has changed significantly since your last photo." Jackson nodded, his heart racing. "Yes, that's correct. I'd like my new license to reflect my current appearance." The woman hesitated, her brow furrowing. "I'm not sure about the protocol for this situation. Let me consult with my supervisor." As she walked away, Jackson felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. He glanced around the room, acutely aware of the curious gazes directed his way. An elderly man in line behind him cleared his throat disapprovingly, while a young mother quickly averted her eyes when Jackson caught her staring. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Finally, the employee returned, accompanied by a stern-looking man in a crisp shirt and tie. "Mr. Thompson," the supervisor addressed him, his tone neutral. "We've reviewed your request. While this is an unusual situation, there's no policy explicitly prohibiting a change in appearance for license photos. We'll proceed with your renewal using your current appearance." Relief washed over Jackson. He smiled gratefully. "Thank you so much. I appreciate your understanding." The rest of the process went smoothly. When it came time for the photo, Jackson posed with confidence, his smile radiant. The flash went off, capturing this pivotal moment in his journey. As he left the DMV, temporary license in hand, Jackson felt a sense of liberation he'd never experienced before. This small act of authenticity was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jackson's life transformed. He began incorporating more feminine elements into his daily wardrobe, starting with subtle accessories and gradually becoming bolder. His co-workers at the marketing firm where he worked were initially shocked, but most came around to support his journey. One particularly memorable day, Jackson decided to wear a pencil skirt and blouse to the office. As he entered the elevator, he encountered his colleague, Mark. "Whoa, Jackson!" Mark exclaimed, his eyes wide. "That's quite a change." Jackson smoothed his skirt nervously. "Yes, well, I decided it was time to be true to myself." Mark nodded slowly, processing the information. "That's brave of you. How are you feeling about it?" "Honestly, terrified and exhilarated at the same time," Jackson admitted. A small smile appeared on Mark's face. "Well, for what it's worth, you look great. That color really suits you." The unexpected compliment warmed Jackson's heart. As they exited the elevator, he felt a little more at ease. Throughout the day, reactions varied. Some coworkers avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable. Others, like his friend Andrea from accounting, were enthusiastically supportive. "Jackson, you absolute queen!" Andrea gushed during their lunch break. "I'm so proud of you for living your truth. And can we talk about how amazing your legs look in that skirt?" Jackson laughed, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thanks, Andrea. It means a lot to have your support." As word spread about Jackson's transformation, he found himself becoming an unexpected source of inspiration for others in the office who felt constrained by societal expectations. People began approaching him for advice on everything from fashion to self-confidence. One evening, as Jackson was packing up to leave work, he received an email from HR requesting a meeting the following morning. His stomach churned with anxiety. Had someone complained about his new appearance? That night, sleep eluded him. He tossed and turned, imagining worst-case scenarios. By morning, dark circles had formed under his eyes, which he carefully concealed with makeup. Dressed in a conservative but stylish dress, Jackson knocked on the HR manager's door. "Come in," a voice called out. Inside, he found not only the HR manager, but also the company's CEO. His heart raced as he took a seat. "Jackson," the CEO began, her tone unreadable. "Your recent changes have not gone unnoticed." He braced himself for bad news, but what came next surprised him. "We believe your journey could be incredibly valuable for our company culture," she continued. "We'd like to offer you the opportunity to lead a new diversity and inclusion initiative, focusing on creating a more accepting workplace for all forms of self-expression." Stunned, Jackson could barely formulate a response. I'm honored. Thank you for this opportunity." As he left the meeting, head spinning with possibilities, Jackson realized that his act of personal courage was rippling out in ways he never could have imagined. Months passed, and Jackson's confidence grew alongside his expanding wardrobe. He experimented with different styles, finding joy in expressing himself through fashion. Some days he embraced full femininity, while on others he mixed masculine and feminine elements in a way that felt true to his evolving identity. One Saturday afternoon, while shopping for new outfits, Jackson ran into his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. He'd always been fond of the kind-hearted widow, but had avoided her since beginning his transformation, fearing her reaction. "Jackson, dear!" Mrs. Callahan exclaimed, approaching him in the women's section of the department store. "I hardly recognized you. My, don't you look lovely?" Surprised by her warm reception, Jackson smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. I hope I haven't shocked you too much." The old woman patted his arm affectionately. "Oh, pish-posh. In my 80 years, I've learned that life's too short not to be who you are. Now, be a dear and help me choose a new cardigan, would you? These old eyes aren't what they used to be." As they browsed the racks together, Mrs. Callahan regaled Jackson with stories of her youth, including tales of her brother who had struggled with his own identity in less accepting times. Her unconditional acceptance touched Jackson deeply, reminding him that kindness often came from unexpected places. Despite the growing support, Jackson's journey wasn't without its challenges. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with his change. His parents, initially shocked, were struggling to understand, but making efforts to adapt. One particularly difficult moment came when Jackson attended his high school reunion. He'd debated whether to go, but ultimately decided it was an opportunity to show his former classmates the person he'd become. Dressed in a stunning evening gown, hair and makeup impeccable, Jackson entered the event space. The room fell silent as heads turned to stare. He recognized faces from his past, the football captain, the prom queen, the class clown, all wearing expressions of disbelief. "Jackson? Is that you?" A voice broke the silence. It was Emma, his old lab partner. He nodded, bracing himself for her reaction. To his surprise, Emma's face broke into a warm smile. "You look amazing. I always knew you were meant for great things, but I never imagined this. Tell me everything." As Jackson shared his story with Emma, others gathered around, curiosity overcoming their initial shock. By the end of the night, he'd reconnected with old friends and even received apologies from former bullies who now admired his courage. The reunion marked a turning point for Jackson. He realized that while not everyone would understand or accept him, there were far more people willing to embrace his authentic self than he'd ever imagined. Back at work, Jackson threw himself into the new diversity initiative. He organized workshops, brought in speakers, and created safe spaces for employees to discuss issues of identity and self-expression. The company culture began to shift, becoming more open and inclusive. One day, a young intern approached Jackson after a particularly impactful seminar. "Mr. Thompson," the intern began nervously, "I just wanted to thank you. Seeing you be so open and confident, it's given me the courage to start my own journey." Touched, Jackson offered words of encouragement and support. He realized that by simply being himself, he was making a difference in ways he never anticipated. As months turned into years, Jackson's dual identity became an integral part of who he was. Some days he presented as traditionally masculine, others as feminine, and many days as a blend of both. He learned to navigate the complexities of dating, finding partners who appreciated all aspects of his personality. On the anniversary of that fateful day at the DMV, Jackson decided to celebrate his journey. He invited friends, family, and co-workers to a party at his favorite restaurant. The guest list was a testament to the diverse community he'd built around himself, from his conservative parents who were finally coming to terms with his choices, to drag queens he'd befriended at local PFLAG meetings. As Jackson stood to make a toast, he looked around at the faces of those who had supported him, challenged him, and loved him throughout his transformation. 5 years ago, I took a step that terrified me, he began, his voice strong and clear. I chose to show the world who I truly am. It hasn't always been easy, but standing here tonight, I can say without a doubt that it was worth it. To authenticity, to courage, and to all of you who've been part of this incredible journey, thank you." The room erupted in applause and cheers. As Jackson raised his glass, he caught sight of his reflection in a nearby mirror. The person looking back at him, confident, happy, and wholly authentic, was someone he was proud to be. In that moment, Jackson knew that while his journey of self-discovery would never truly end, he had found a place of peace and acceptance within himself. The road ahead would have its challenges, but he was ready to face them, secure in the knowledge that he was living his truth. As the party continued around him, Jackson took a moment to step outside onto the restaurant's balcony. The city sprawled before him, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. He thought about all the people out there who might be struggling with their own identities, afraid to take that first step. If he could send a message to his past self, or to anyone else standing at the precipice of such a life-changing decision, what would he say? The answer came to him as clearly as the stars shining above. Be brave. Be authentic. Be you. With a smile, Jackson rejoined his guests, ready to dance the night away, celebrating not just his journey, but the beautiful, complex tapestry of human expression that made the world such a vibrant place. As the years passed, Jackson's influence continued to grow. He became a sought-after speaker on issues of identity and self-expression in the workplace. Companies across the country invited him to share his experiences and insights, hoping to foster more inclusive environments for their employees. On one such speaking engagement, Jackson found himself in a small Midwestern town, far from the progressive bubble of his city life. The audience was a mix of curious locals and corporate employees, some openly skeptical of his message. During the Q&A session, a gruff-looking man in a flannel shirt stood up. "I don't mean any disrespect," he began, his tone suggesting otherwise. "But how do you expect regular folks like us to understand all this gender stuff?" Jackson took a deep breath, recognizing the importance of this moment. "Understanding starts with listening," he replied calmly. "I don't expect everyone to relate to my experience, but I do ask that you try to empathize. Haven't we all, at some point, felt the need to hide a part of ourselves for fear of judgment?" The man's expression softened slightly as Jackson continued. "What I'm advocating for isn't about changing who you are, but creating a world where everyone feels safe to be themselves. When we do that, we all benefit from the diversity of perspectives and experiences." By the end of the session, even the most skeptical attendees were nodding along, many approaching Jackson afterward to shake his hand or share their own stories of feeling like outsiders. As Jackson's public profile grew, so did the challenges. He received hate mail and faced protesters at some of his events. But for every negative encounter, there were dozens of positive ones, people whose lives had been changed by his message of authenticity and acceptance. One particularly memorable moment came when Jackson was invited to speak at his alma mater. Standing on the stage of the auditorium where he'd once felt so out of place, he looked out at a sea of young faces, eager to hear his story.
"When I was sitting where you are now,"
he began,
"I never could have imagined standing here like this. I was hiding then, not just from all of you, but from myself. The journey to self-discovery isn't always easy, but it's always worth it."
As he spoke, Jackson noticed a young person in the front row, hanging on his every word. He recognized the look in their eyes, the same mix of fear and hope he'd once felt. After the talk, the student approached him timidly.
"Mr. Thompson,"
they said, voice quavering.
"Your story,
It's given me hope. I've been struggling with my identity, and I was afraid I'd never find a place where I belong." Jackson's heart swelled with empathy. He placed a gentle hand on the student's shoulder.
"There's a place for you in this world," he assured them. "It might take time to find it, but never stop being true to yourself."
The gratitude in the student's eyes reminded Jackson of why he continued to share his story, despite the challenges. Every life touched, every mind opened, made it all worthwhile. As he approached his 40s, Jackson found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past decade. He'd gone from a man afraid to express his true self to someone who had helped shape the conversation around gender expression and identity in the workplace and beyond. His personal life had evolved as well. After a series of relationships that helped him understand his needs and desires, Jackson had found a partner who loved and accepted all facets of his identity. Together, they created a home that was a safe haven for self-expression, not just for themselves, but for friends and chosen family who needed a place to be authentically themselves. One crisp autumn evening, as Jackson stood in front of his closet, deciding what to wear to a charity gala, his partner wrapped their arms around him from behind. "What's on your mind, love?" they asked, noticing Jackson's contemplative expression. Jackson smiled, leaning into the embrace. "I was just thinking about how far I've come. Remember when I used to agonize over every outfit, terrified of what people might think?" His partner chuckled. "And now look at you. You could wear a paper bag and still command a room." Laughing, Jackson turned to face them. "It's not just about the clothes anymore. It's about feeling comfortable in my own skin, no matter how I present myself to the world." As they got ready for the gala, Jackson marveled at how natural it now felt to move between different modes of expression. He chose a beautifully tailored suit for the event, but accessorized with delicate jewelry and a touch of makeup. The result was a look that was uniquely him, neither strictly masculine nor feminine, but a harmonious blend of both. At the gala, Jackson moved through the crowd with ease, chatting with CEOs and activists alike. He overheard snippets of conversation about his influence on company policies and societal attitudes. It was humbling to realize the ripple effect his personal journey had created. Later that night, as he and his partner swayed on the dance floor, Jackson felt a profound sense of peace. He thought about the scared person who had walked into that DMV years ago, taking the first tentative steps towards authenticity. If he could somehow reach back through time and speak to that version of himself, what would he say? The answer came to him as clearly as the music surrounding them. "You're on the right path. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Keep going, keep growing, and never stop being true to yourself." As the song ended, Jackson pulled his partner close, overwhelmed with gratitude for the life he'd built and the person he'd become. In that moment, he knew that while his journey was far from over, he was exactly where he was meant to be. The gala wound down, and as Jackson and his partner made their way home, the city streets were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. They walked hand in hand, comfortable in the silence that comes with years of companionship. Suddenly, Jackson stopped, tugging gently on his partner's hand. "Look," he said, pointing to a shop window they were passing. Inside, a mannequin wore an outfit strikingly similar to the floral dress he'd worn to the DMV all those years ago. His partner squeezed his hand.
"Want to go in and try it on for old time's sake?"
Jackson shook his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. "No, I don't think so. That dress served its purpose. It was the costume I needed to play the role of my true self until I became comfortable enough to just be me without needing any particular outfit to define me. They continued their walk, but Jackson's mind lingered on the dress and all it represented. He thought about the countless individuals he'd met over the years who were just beginning their own journeys of self-discovery. Some were taking bold steps like he had, while others were making small, private changes that only they knew about. As they neared their home, Jackson made a decision. "I think it's time for me to write a book," he announced. His partner raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "About your experiences?" "Yes, but more than that. A guide for anyone struggling with their identity, not just gender identity, but any aspect of themselves they're afraid to express. I want to share what I've learned, the mistakes I've made, the victories I've celebrated." Excited by the idea, Jackson spent the next few months pouring his heart into the book. He recounted his journey, from the early days of secret longings to his current life of openness and advocacy. But more than just telling his story, he offered advice, encouragement, and practical tips for others on similar paths. The book, titled Becoming You, A Journey to Authenticity, was published to critical acclaim. It quickly became a bestseller, resonating with people from all walks of life who saw pieces of their own struggles and aspirations in Jackson's words. Book signings and speaking engagements took Jackson across the country once again, but this time, instead of facing skepticism and confusion, he was met with overwhelming support and gratitude. At one particularly memorable event, a middle-aged woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice wavering, "your book gave me the courage to come out to my family after hiding who I am for decades. I never thought I'd see the day when I could be my true self." Moments like these reminded Jackson of the power of sharing one's truth. Each person who found the strength to be authentic created a ripple effect, slowly but surely changing the world around them. As Jackson entered his 50s, he found himself taking on a new role, that of a mentor to younger generations, navigating their own paths to self-discovery. He volunteered at local organizations, offering guidance and support to individuals questioning their identity or struggling with self-acceptance. One day, while mentoring a young person grappling with their gender expression, Jackson was struck by how much things had changed since his own journey began. The language around gender and identity had evolved, offering more nuanced ways for people to describe their experiences. Yet the core struggle, the desire to be seen and accepted for who you truly are, remained the same. "You know," Jackson told his mentee, "when I started this journey, I thought it was about becoming someone else, someone more feminine, someone different from who I had been. But what I've learned is that it's not about becoming someone else at all. It's about becoming more fully yourself." The young person nodded, their eyes wide with understanding. "So, how do you know when you've figured it out? When you've become you?" Jackson chuckled softly. "That's the beautiful thing. You never really stop becoming. We're all works in progress, constantly growing and changing. The key is to embrace that journey, to be open to all the different facets of yourself as they reveal themselves." As he spoke, Jackson realized that his own journey was far from over. Even now, decades after that first brave step at the DMV, he was still discovering new aspects of himself, still growing and evolving. That night, as he prepared for bed, Jackson caught sight of himself in the mirror. The face looking back at him was lined with the stories of a life fully lived, the joys, the struggles, the moments of doubt, and the triumphs of self-discovery. He saw in his reflection not just the man he was, or the woman he sometimes presented as, but the sum total of all his experiences, all the versions of himself he had been and would yet be. With a contented smile, Jackson turned away from the mirror and climbed into bed next to his sleeping partner. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment, and excitement for all that was yet to come. In the quiet of the night, Jackson's last thought before succumbing to sleep was a message to his younger self, to anyone standing at the precipice of self-discovery, and to his own future self, continuing on this lifelong journey. Be brave. Be authentic. Be you. The world is waiting for the gift of your true self.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.